The Satanic Mill by Otfried Preussler. 9. The Ox Dealer from Kamenz. Sometimes the master sent his men out on errands, in pairs or in small groups, to give them a chance to use the arts they learned in the Black School. One morning, Tonda went up to Krabbit. "I have to go to Wittich Castle Market with Andrush today," he said. "The master says you can go with us if you like." "Good," said Krabbit. "It'll make a change from all this grinding of grain." They took a path through the woods that joined the road beside some houses near Newdorf Village Pond. It was a fine, sunny July day. The jays were calling in the branches. They could hear the tapping of a woodpecker. Swarms of honeybees and bumblebees filled the wild raspberry bushes with their buzzing. Krabbit noticed that Tonda and Andrush looked as merry as if they were off to the fair. It couldn't be just the fine weather. Andrush, of course, was always a cheerful, good-tempered fellow, but it was unusual to hear Tonda whistling happily to himself. From time to time, he cracked his ox whip. "Are you practicing to do that on the way home?" said Krabbit. "What do you mean on the way home? I thought we were going to Wittich to buy an ox." "On the contrary," said Tonda. Just at that moment, Krabbit heard a loud moo behind him, and when he turned around, there was a fine ox standing where Andrush had been a moment before. It had a smooth, reddish-brown coat and was looking at him in a friendly way. "Hey," said Krabbit, rubbing his eyes. Suddenly, Tonda too was gone, and in his place there stood an old Wendish peasant, wearing felt shoes, linen trousers with cross-gartering from ankle to knee, and a smock belted with a cord. He had a greasy fur cap, its brim rubbed bare. "Hey," said Krabbit again. Then someone tapped him on the shoulder and laughed. When he turned, there was Andrush back again. "Where did you go, Andrush? And where's the ox? And where's that ox, the one that was standing here just now?" "Moo," said Andrush in an ox's voice. "What about Tonda?" The peasant turned back into Tonda before Krabbit's very eyes. "So that's it," said the boy. "Yes, that's it," said Tonda. "Andrush is going to show his paces in the cattle market." "You mean you're going to sell him?" "Those are the master's orders." But suppose Andrush gets sent to be slaughtered?" "No fear of that," Tonda assured him. "Once we sell Andrush as an ox, all we have to do is keep his halter. Then he can turn himself into any shape he likes, any time he likes." "Suppose we lose the halter?" "You dare?" cried Andrush. "If you did that, I'd have to stay an ox all my life, eating hay and straw. Just you get that into your heads, and don't do any such thing." Tonda and Krabbit created a great sensation in Wittich Castle Market. Their ox was much admired. All the dealers came hurrying up and surrounded them, and a few of the townsfolk and some farmers who had already disposed of their pigs and bullocks joined the crowd. It wasn't every day you saw such a fine fat ox. They all felt they'd like to get their hands on it before anyone else could snap up such a splendid animal from under their noses. "How much?" The cattle dealers showered Tonda with questions, shouting at the tops of their voices. Master Kraus, the butcher from Hoyerswerda, offered 15 guilders for Andrush, and Lame Luschener from Koningsbruck went one better and offered 16. Tonda merely shook his head. "Not good enough," said he. "Not good enough," said they. "He must be crazy," they assured him. Did he take them for fools?" "Fools or no," said Tonda, "I suppose you gentlemen must know the best yourselves." "Very well, then," said Master Kraus from Hoyerswerda. 18. 18? Why, I'd rather keep him myself," growled Tonda. He would not let Master Luschner from Koningsbruck have him for 19 guilders either, or young Gustav Neubauer from Sevtenberg for 20. "The devil take you and your ox, then," cried Master Kraus angrily. And Master Luschner, tapping his forehead, said, "I'd be a fool to ruin myself. 22, and that's my last word." The bargaining seemed to have reached a deadlock when a fat, shapeless man, puffing like a grampus, at every step he took, pushed his way through the crowd. His frog face, with its round goggle eyes, was shiny with sweat. He wore a green tailcoat with silver buttons, a showy watch chain over his red satin vest, and there was a fat purse at his belt for all the world to see. Master Blashke, the ox dealer from Kamenz, was one of the richest and probably the shrewdest of all the cattle dealers for miles around. Pushing Master Luschner and young Gustav Neubauer aside, he shouted in his loud, blustering voice, "How in heaven's name did such a thin fellow come by such a fat ox? I'll take him for 25. Tonda scratched his ear. "Not good enough, sir," said he. "Not good enough? Did you ever hear the like of that?" Blashke took out a big silver snuff box, snapped open the lid, and offered it to Tonda. "Want a pinch?" He let the old Wendish peasant take snuff before he took a pinch himself. "A tissue! That's the right stuff, and no mistake. Thank you, sir." Blashke blew his nose on a big checkered handkerchief. "The devil take it, then. 27, hand him over." "Not good enough, sir." Master Blashke went scarlet in the face. "What do you think I am? 27 guilders for your ox? Not a penny more, or my name's not Blashke of Kamenz." 30, sir," said Tonda. "You can have him for 30. "It's daylight robbery!" cried Blashke. "Do you want to ruin me?" He rolled his eyes and wrung his hands. "Have you no heart? Are you blind and deaf to the troubles of a poor fellow trying to make an honest living? Don't be so hard-hearted, old man. Let me have your ox for 28. Tonda stood firm. 30, and that's that. This ox is a fine specimen, worth every penny. You've no notion how hard it is for me to part with him. Why, it couldn't be worse if I was selling my own son." Blashke realized he was getting nowhere, but the ox really was a beautiful animal. Why waste more time with this pig-headed wend? "Hand him over, then, in the devil's name," he cried. "This is my day for being soft-hearted. Anyone can just wind me around his little finger. It's a weakness of mine, all because I have a kind heart, and I'm good to the poor. Well, give us your hand on it. Then done, said Tonda, taking off his cap. He made Blashke count out the 30 guilders into it one by one. "Did you count them too?" asked Blashke. "I did." "Come here, then, my Wendish ox." Blashke took Andrush by the halter and was about to lead him off. But Tonda grasped the fat man's sleeve. "Well, what is it?" said Blashke. "Why now," said Tonda, acting embarrassed. "It's a little thing, nothing much." "Come on, out with it." "If you'd be so kind as to leave me that halter, Master Blashke, I'd be very grateful." "The halter?" "As a keepsake," said Tonda. "You must know how hard it is for me to part with my ox, Master Blashke. I'll give you another halter instead, Master Blashke, so you can take my poor ox away now he's not mine any more." Tonda untied the cord he was wearing as a belt, and Blashke, shrugging his shoulders, let him exchange it for the ox's halter. Then the dealer went off with Andrush, and he was hardly around the corner before he began to grin broadly. Maybe he had paid 30 guilders for Andrush, and that was a pretty steep price, but he could easily sell such a fine ox for double that in Dresden, maybe more. Tonda and Krabbit sat down on the grass in the outskirts of the wood behind the village pond and the houses to wait for Andrush. They had bought a piece of bacon and a loaf of bread in Wittich now, and they ate some of it. "You were really good," Krabbit told Tonda. "You should have seen yourself the way you squeezed the money out of that fat fellow." "Not good enough, sir, not good enough. A good thing you remembered the halter in time. I'd have clean forgotten it myself." "You'll learn soon," Tonda reassured him. They put a piece of bread and bacon aside for Andrush, wrapping them both in Krabbit's smock, and then decided to lie down for a while. Well fed as they were, and tired from their long walk, they fell asleep and slept soundly until a moo woke them. And there was Andrush, back in human form, and sound in wind and limb, so far as anyone could see. Hey there, you two folks have been known to sleep themselves silly before now. I hope you've at least left me a crust of bread." "Bread and bacon, too," said Tonda. "Sit down, brother, and eat up. How did you get on with Blashke?" "Why, how do you suppose?" muttered Andrush. "It's no fun to be an ox, I can tell you, and trot across country for miles, breathing in all the dust, especially when you're not used to it. Well, I didn't mind at all when Blashke turned in at an alehouse in Osling. He and the innkeeper there are cousins, you see, and they do a lot of business together, too. Look at that, cries the innkeeper when he sees us coming. If it isn't my cousin from Kamenz. How are you keeping, then, and how are things with you? Not so bad, said Blashky, not so bad at all, if it wasn't for the thirst this heat has given a man. We'll soon see to that, says the innkeeper. Come along, into the tap room. There's plenty of beer in the cellar. Even you couldn't finish it inside of 7 weeks. How about my ox, the fat man asks. That ox cost me 30 guilders. We'll put him in the stables, and he can have all the water and fodder he likes. Fodder for oxen, he meant, of course. Andrew spread a big chunk of bacon on his knife and sniffed at it before stuffing it into his mouth. So they put me in the stable, he went on, and the innkeeper calls for the girl who helps with the horses. Here, Cathal, he says, see to this ox. He belongs to my cousin from Kamenz, and we don't want him losing any weight. Very good, sir, says Cathal, stuffing an armful of hay into my manger right away. That was enough for me. I was tired of being an ox. I didn't think twice about it, I can tell you. I just said in my own voice and human words, you can eat your hay and straw yourself. Roast pork is what I fancy, with cabbage and dumplings, and a mug of good beer. And then what? Cried Crabbit. Oh, well, said Androuche. At that, the 3 of them were so frightened their legs gave way beneath them, and down they all plumped. They shouted for help, as if they were being roasted alive. I mooed at them again, just to say goodbye, and then I turned into a swallow and flew out of the door. Cheep, cheep, and I was gone. What about Master Blashky? The devil take Master Blashky and his cattle dealing. Andrews reached for the ox whip and cracked it hard as if to lend his words force. I'm glad to be myself again, pockmarks and all. I'm glad of it too, said Tonda. You played your part well, and I dare say Crabbit has learned a lot. I have indeed, cried the boy. I know what fun it can be to work magic now. Fun? The head journeyman sounded serious all of a sudden. Fun? Well, you may be right. It can be fun at times. And that's the end of chapter 9.